varm applåd från nästa talare. J.P. Hanson.
So, thank you very much. Thank you, Fredrik, for that lovely introduction. Thank you, Patrick, for having me. First of all, yes, I am Swedish. However, because we have quite a few international guests here today, of course, as well as our sort of truly honored international guest speakers, I thought I'd do this talk in English, so I hope that's fine. So, who am I? Well, as Fredrik said, my name is J.P. Hanson. And a lot of you are probably going, who the hell is this guy? Because of course I am, shall we say, slightly less unknown internationally than I am back here. But I am both a marketer and a lawyer, which usually puts me on par with the devil in most people's eyes. But it does provide me with a slightly different perspective on things, because I'm both an outsider and an insider. In my normal day job, I am the CEO of an international strategic consultancy called Rouser, which was actually originally founded here in Stockholm. And in my normal day job, I tend to work in that gap between your marketing department and your C-suite or your board, typically on matters of strategy, organizational effectiveness, marketing alignment, and what I suppose one might call business transformation. But if we just cut the management bullshit lingo, what I really do is I help clients make more money, or sometimes save more money. On top of that, I write a fair bit. So in the past, I've written for outlets such as The Drum and the IPA's effectiveness works that you may know from Lesson Peter on matters of marketing effectiveness. And then recently, I joined Mark at Marketing Week as a columnist. And then lastly, well, I basically do this. I travel around the world and I give talks. And the topic of today's talk is becoming Peter Dalle. Now this, of course, is something that I can't really do internationally, but hopefully you'll understand who this is. If you don't, well, Peter Dalle, he is one of the most successful comedians in Swedish history. He's largely responsible for the sketch show Lorry, that we all know and we all love, and spawned a couple of movies, some of which we know, some of them we love, others, meh, not so much. But he is perhaps most famous for one specific character in Lorry, and it's this guy, the inventor. I just hearing about the laughs, I know that you guys know who this is. For those of you who don't, this is an iconic character in Lorry. In every episode, this inventor would enthusiastically talk about something that he had discovered or found, and he'd tell the patent officer all about it. And the patent officer would ask him a bunch of questions, and inevitably, the reply was, I didn't think about that. Marketing departments are becoming Peter Dalle. We're speaking very enthusiastically about all these things that we have discovered and come up with, but are we really thinking about what we're doing? We're much like the inventor, talking about all these things that's going to change everything forever. Artificial intelligence, that will change marketing forever. Facial recognition, yeah, that too will change marketing forever, as will lead marketing, Apple Watches apparently, mobility, social, cloud, as we were talking about, big data, that will change marketing forever. Virtual reality, it will change marketing forever. But is this marketing? No. These are tools. Tools that we use within marketing. Marketing isn't changing. The tools that we're using, they're changing. We didn't think about that. And so what really is the problem today? What's the problem in marketing departments? The problem is that we're not thinking about the problem. That's the problem. So Albert Einstein once famously said that if the world was coming to an end, and he had 1 hour to solve the problem that would prevent that from happening, he would spend 55 minutes try to identify what the problem was, and 5 minutes on the solution. Modern marketing departments work kind of the opposite way. We spend almost no time at all on the problem, and we jump straight into the solutions. We are turning marketing into a game of Jeopardy. We have the answer, but what was the question? The result? This is how marketing departments work today. This is client data. I've sort of rigged up a camera in one of our clients' offices. So, you know, if you recognize something this, maybe you won't share it outside of these halls, but it's basically this. We are continuously trying to lay the track in front of us as we go. We're just trying solution after solution after solution, which in and of itself can be sort of fair enough, but the problem is that eventually we're going to run out of track. We're going to derail, and we're going to have a crash. We've become Dalle because we didn't really think about that. We need to think more strategically. So what is really strategic thinking? Well, it is complex problem solving. What we're dealing with as marketers, regardless of who we are complex problems. Why? Because we're dealing with human beings. Just like Emma was talking about, and just like Rory probably will be talking about, they are biased, they are irrational. So anything to do with them will be complex. And I'm sure you've had this. Sometime you'll talk to someone and they'll go, you know, marketing is not rocket science, is it? No, it's a hell of a lot more difficult than that. We are really good at rocket science. We can send rockets to Mars, but sustainable business performance, that's almost impossible still. So we try to solve complex problems, and we do that within an internal organizational context. We work for companies. Regardless of whether we're working brand side, or if we're working agency side, or as consultants, we work for companies. And in turn, that company will act within an external competitive setting. When we're trying to solve problems, when we're trying to do marketing, our competitors are trying to do the same thing. And they're trying to beat us, okay? Performance is not absolute. It's relative. What matters is not doing things well, it's doing things better than one's competitors. We don't think about that. So at this point, you might go, well, hello here, JP, time out. You're a strategist, and you're saying we need to think more strategically? That's a bit convenient. And to be fair, they'll be sort of on par for the course for events such as this. So you'll have someone come on stage and they'll tell you all about their problems, and sort of magically the solution will be whatever they just happen to be selling, right? What are the odds? But, okay, you may not trust me. This is just what we're seeing with our clients. So let's have a look at what the data says. This is a recent survey done by eConsultancy. It was called Skills of the Modern Marketer. It came out about a month ago. And what they did was that they looked into a lot of international marketing departments, and they tried to figure out, okay, what are we good at, what are we not so good at? Lo and behold, strategic thinking was the area in which marketers have the lowest level of competency. A mere 10% were considered to be on expert level. But at the same time, is the most important skill for a marketer to master. Why? Why is it that? Why isn't that some sort of tactical solution like AI or whatever? Because again, it deals with business problems. And I don't care how good a marketer you think yourself to be. We're talking about Dunning-Kruger effects, but you might be the best marketer on the planet. I don't know. But you're going to have problems. So you need to know how to solve them. Quite demonstrably, there is a strategic knowledge gap here. And so if we are managers, we actually have to help our marketers, because clearly it's really, really important, but they're not very good at it. So if you're a leader in the marketing department, you can't really just go in and go, guys, you need to be more strategic. Well, okay. You need to help them understand what they're doing. You need to show them the strategies. Otherwise, it's kind of like asking a bunch of builders to erect an apartment block, but they don't have an architectural plan. They sort of have, you know, a hammer, a couple of nails, and sort of the vague idea of the concept of housing. What's the result? It's this. It's not really what anyone would want if you happen to live above the first floor, now is it? Right. So what is it that we can do to ensure that this doesn't happen? Well, we can start with our marketing strategy and remind ourselves, and apologies if this is basic, but it's one of those things that we need to remind ourselves. what the marketing strategic phases are. The first thing we need to do is the diagnostics phase. What is actually happening on the market? Not just what people are saying that they're doing, but what are they actually doing? Going back to what Weimer was talking about. And we do this to ensure market orientation. Again, like Weimer was talking about. You are not your customers, okay? Your customers don't give a shit about brands in general. They really don't give a shit about your brand. Not to the extent that you do. Brands have sort of functions. They sort of reduce cognitive burdens and they help us make decisions. But people don't love brands, even though we as marketers love brands. But then again, I'm obsessed by brands, and even I, who loves his Mercedes, really doesn't love it the way that I love my fiance. You know, especially not when she's in the audience. But nonetheless, we need to go through this. We need to ensure market orientation. Once we've done that, then we go into the strategic phase, where we try to identify who are we trying to reach and why. What kind of objectives do we have? What kind of goals do we have? I don't care if they're smart goals, fast goals, objectives and key results, whatever floats your boat. But we need to define what kind of problem we're actually trying to solve here. Once we've done that, then we get into the executional phase. Then we can look at all the cool stuff, all the gadgets, all the tools, all the virtual reality, whatever it might be. Although, to be fair, it's probably not going to be virtual reality. And the reason why, just as a side note, is that we actually had virtual reality in the 1930s. We did. It was used to train pilots for the Second World War. But then it disappeared. It came back in the 60s. It disappeared. Came back again in the 90s. It disappeared again. And now it's recently come back and it's on its way out again. So it's not really the future. Marketing comes and goes every 30 years. It's basically tuberculosis. But you know, who knows? It might be that in your sort of executional phase, you realize, oh, we need to do virtual reality. Then fine, but you need to identify the problem first. But in and of itself, this is not enough. We're still in the risk of becoming Peter Dalle. And why? Because things go on beneath the surface. And I'm going to illustrate with a real-life example. These are two real-life companies. I've just removed their names so I don't get into trouble, being a lawyer and all. So let's call them Company A and Company B. These two companies sell aluminum cans in a B2B setting. The same product, basically. They're roughly the same size. They have roughly the same brand, roughly the same revenue. So they're roughly the same. We have a lot of really good marketers in this room. How would you market these two companies? If you're the kind of marketer who is a Peter Dalle, you'll go straight into tactics. You're probably going to say something like, ooh, content marketing, as we shall see later when the Capera guys are up talking. But of course, you haven't identified the problem yet. You're not thinking strategically. Okay, so we go through our marketing strategic phases. We look at the market, what's happening, what are people doing, what are our objectives, and then we go into our tactics. But have we considered the business strategy? No. So when you look beneath the surface, you realize that these two companies are set up completely differently. The first company does long runs to big clients, therefore they do quite a few shipments, rather few shipments. Because of it, their costs are quite low, and they could keep a low price because of it. Their scale is quite high. They have scalability advantages, but their time to market is quite slow. Company B, on the other hand, is set up completely differently. It does short runs, has smaller clients, many of them, does many shipments, therefore their costs are quite high. They have to carry a high price in order to maintain their margins. So they don't really have that scale benefit, but their time to market is quite fast. Knowing this can change your marketing, especially in the short term, quite dramatically. Because let's say we work for Company A, and we go after the kind of customer the Company B has. Well, we're not going to get the size of the orders that our company is built on. Therefore, we won't be able to use scale to our advantage. Our costs will go up, and our margins will go down. If we work for company B and we target company A, or rather their customers, well, it might be that we just don't have the supply chain to be able to handle that kind of demand. Okay? So we've essentially created a demand for which we have no supply. We haven't really solved the problem based on the kind of tools that we have at our disposal. Now, long term, we want to reach all category buyers, and that category is not necessarily defined by you. It's defined by your buyers, because the buyers of these companies, they just think they're buying aluminum cans. That's it. But in the short term, we're not really set up for that. So we may want to acquire the other company, go into M&A activities, for example. But long term, we are going to have to go after the other company's clients because we need light buyers, we need many buyers to grow, as Weimer was talking about. The important thing to understand is that brands are different. They have different capabilities. There's a lot of talk about digitally native vertical brands these days and how they're so agile and they only work with e-commerce. And no one really does the thing about, well, what's the problem here? Why? They're becoming Peter Dalle. They're just not thinking about the problem. Why is it that digitally native vertical brands love e-commerce? Because they're small. They don't have the capability to be able to handle the kind of demand that a big retail chain will do. Similarly, a large company may not be able to be as agile as a small digitally native vertical brand. But what do these companies do as they grow? They open up normal, regular stores. What are Amazon doing these days? They're opening brick and mortar stores. But remember, again, context matters. If you look at the voice or the line, believe in something, even if it means sacrificing anything, it can be kind of different depending on whether you're Colin Kaepernick or Theresa May. Brands are different. We need to understand what the problem is that we're trying to solve. Then we can look at the tools at our disposal. And once we've done that, we're on our way to avoiding to become Peter Dalle. And it will help us greatly with evaluation because of it, because we know what the problem is, so we know whether we're actually solving the problem or not. It will help us with campaign evaluation, for example. This is Client Data, an FMCG company. They ran a digital video campaign, as I'm sure you all have done. And they ran it on YouTube, Facebook, impressions. YouTube, 2.1 million. Facebook, 5.3-ish million. And your average Peter Dalle marketer would look at this and go, wow, that's amazing. And he'll run off to his boss's office and knock on the door, and he'll go, great news. But we did this campaign, and we got like 2.1 million impressions on YouTube and 5.3 million on Facebook. Yeah, how many of them were actually valid and viewable? I didn't think about that. So he has to go back to his desk, right? He does a bit of number crunching. He realizes that the amount of impressions that were valid and viewable for YouTube, it was 1.8 million. That's pretty good. I'll argue it's very good. Facebook, not so much. 133,000. He goes back to his boss's office. He knocks on the door again and he goes, I got good news and I got bad news. Okay. Well, the good news is we got 1.8 million valid and viewable impressions on YouTube. Okay? The bad news, 133,000 on Facebook. Right, but how many of them were actually audible and completed? I didn't think about that. So he has to go back to his office a third time, right? He does a bit of number crunching and he realizes the amount of impressions that were audible and completed for YouTube was 237,000. For Facebook, roll the drums, 35,000. That's 11.4% on YouTube and 0.6% on Facebook. Now, unless the problem you're trying to solve is, holy shit, we have way too much money, this is not solving the problem, okay? However, remember what I said, and this is usually why brands still end up doing these things. Performance is not absolute, it's relative. It might be that our competitors are doing the same thing on Facebook, and chances are that they are. And they're probably going to see the same results. Again, chances are that they are. So it might be that the 0.6%, as pathetic as that is, it might be still better than our competitors. We can't really know. There's one thing we can know for sure. What two companies are really excelling at this? YouTube and Facebook. So, once we have established what the problem is, it will help us with our campaign evaluation, but also this, it helps us avoid getting drunk on data. You should never use data the way that a drunk uses a lamppost. That is for support, not illumination. Okay? This is how brands do use data. They look at the impressions, they become Dalle, and all of a sudden, well, I didn't think about that. Not only that, but knowing what the problem is and thinking strategically will actually help us evaluate decisions. Because again, if we know what the problem is, then all of a sudden we can measure against that. We can keep track. So, when you make your decision, what was the strategic context? What was known at the time? Were you using data to illuminate or for support? What was your circle of competence? In other words, what did you know about this problem? Were you comfortable making the decision? Were you the Peter Dalle guy who just thought, impressions, yay, that's what we're looking after? Or were you his boss who realized that probably that won't solve the problem? Not only that, but understanding what the problem is will help us avoid bias traps. Now, Emma has already mentioned this, but the one bias trap you really need to be aware of if you're talking strategy is halo effect. And again, just to remind ourselves what they are, essentially we judge books by their covers. And these effects are really powerful. And to illustrate, I'm sure some of you have seen this show called The Voice. It's a show designed to avoid halo effects. Yes. So what happens is the judges will sit with their backs to the applicants or the contestants. Someone will go on, and rather than judge them on their appearance, they will judge them on their voice. Okay? What happens next? Someone comes on, they sing really nicely. The judge presses the button, the chair turns, and the reaction is this. Oh my God, I had no idea that ugly people were talented. That's another halo effect. They've just heard the voice, thought, well, the voice is really nice, therefore they must be really nice and really pretty too. Not so much. In business, what is the single most attractive thing? The single most attractive trait? Performance. Of course. We all love brands that do well. How many articles have we read where it just said, oh, become the next Google or whatever? So this is what it looks like in practice. This is Cisco, a company that I'm sure some of you are aware of, or not most. This is their stock price. And as you can see here, there's a bit of a top going on around the year 2000. Around the year 2000, Cisco was the best place to work. They had the best leaders, they had the best strategies, the best corporate culture. Yep, they had that too. And they were really, really customer-centric. But then they had a bit of a tumble. And all of a sudden, same company, well, they really didn't have any visionary leaders. The corporate culture was crap. They were not customer-centric. They were actually neglecting their customers. And of course, their marketing was just bullshit. How many here think that they've changed what they were doing? No one. Of course they didn't. Why would you change a winning recipe? But we act within complex context. Business performance is really difficult to maintain. But we are Peter Dalle. We don't think about that. Similarly, if we look at campaigns and marketing, we go back to the Colin Kaepernick campaign, as I'm sure many of you know of. It was launched in September of last year. This is Nike's stock price. There's where the campaign was launched. So you can see, stock price went up. And people said, oh, this is because this campaign is amazing. It's all to do with this campaign. That's why Nike has the highest stock prices ever. What happened next? Oops. The stock price plummeted. An analyst who came in then said, oh, clearly this campaign is very divisive. It's splitting people. We're hitting the wrong kind of buyer. The fact of the matter is that, again, we act within complex settings. Marketing, as much as we like to think otherwise, is quite a small part of the business performance. It's not really that important. For us it is, for the company it is, but in the grand scheme of things, it's a very small part. So we need to keep that in mind. We need to keep the problem in mind, or less we might end up becoming Peter Dalle. So what is it that we want to think about if we are to avoid that? Well, firstly, identify the problem first. Then you can look at the solution. What the hell kind of business problem are you trying to solve? Once you know that, then you can look at solutions. You ensure strategic relevance. If we have a clear strategy, then we know what to measure against. If we have 11 different strategies and we're all over the place, we're just going to end up butting heads. We're going to do things that, for example, our sales department is going to promise one thing, our marketing is going to promise another thing, and the sorry bastards at R&D is going to have to live up to either promise, and they really can't. We need to ensure strategic alignment. Sorry, I know there's a lot of managers here. You're not excluded. You need to do your part as well. Remember, strategies are not nude photos. You want to share them with your employees. You don't want to lock them away for no one to see. Use data and tracking for illumination, not support. Remember the dunk with the lamppost. You take advantage of different opinions and different perspectives. You don't want to be the really narrow guy who just looks at impressions. You want to ensure that you get multiple opinions. And lastly, be aware of bias traps and especially halo effects. And a really good, simple tool that I've discovered to be able to do this, and this is perhaps the lawyer in me, is to write it down. This sounds very analog and it's not very techy. Of course, you can use your computer to write down. But the point being that if you motivate your key decisions in writing, you can use it for reference. You can use it for accountability. You're going to have to address what kind of problem you're trying to solve, what tools we're using, what kind of people were in on the decision, and what was the strategic relevance. All of that is ensured if you actually write the thing down. But you need to do that. If you do that, I promise, I can fire you if you fuck up, but I can help you save your job if the result of your decision was just down to bad luck. The important thing is, if we do this, we avoid becoming Peter Dalle. And that's something to think about. Thank you.